Attention. Welcome to the Different Spectrums podcast. We dive into the wild world of mental health discussions. Get ready for profound talks, a sprinkle of humor and sarcasm, and a touch of colorful language. Just a quick heads up, our show reflects our individual opinions, which may not align with the standpoint of the podcast, our featured guests, or any related corporate entities. Our mission? To illuminate through laughter and satire because everyone needs a good chuckle. Chill out and don't stress over the small stuff. Legal troubles? No, thank you. Cancel culture? Please spare us. We'd rather keep this space lawsuit free. So buckle up, have a good time, and join us as we navigate the vibrant realm of mental health on the Different Spectrums podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. By using our link, you can get 10% off your first month of therapy. So, Naz, as a therapist on BetterHelp, what has your experience been like?
I've been doing it since January of 2021, and it's been really fun and exciting. I've been able to reach clients all over the United States and the world. I've had good relationships. I've had folks that I've had for a couple months and a good handful where I've had for almost 2 years now. So it's magnificent. I've enjoyed my time and my clients. I love them.
Awesome. You can do it all from your phone or computer via phone call, video chat, or messaging, however you feel the most comfortable. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/DSP or choose Different Spectrums podcast during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
All right. We got another special episode during this Christmas break, winter break, New Year's and all that. We were doing some easier episodes. So this one is going to be a specific podcast where I joined the Autism Goes to College team. The documentary that was out, we've already released that in the beginning of November, that podcast. Well, it technically was Halloween, but whatever. So this is going to be the introduction for that. You're just going to hop in for about an hour, check us out. It's going to be me talking about what autism's like on college, the assets or resources that you can use, and how it's not really a thing that people really talk about when it comes to the DEI related stuff or diversity related materials. So autism's usually left out because it's more of this not seen type of thing when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion. So I really love that team. Really love how they set things up. Go check them out. We've already, like I said, had Eric on the team, who was the director and producer of all that. And so now you're going to just watch me talk to them on their pod. So go follow them, go check them out, specifically if you're autistic or if you know anyone. They pump out a lot of good material to help out a lot of good folks feel affirmed, validated when it comes to just being in college and being neurodivergent, being autistic. So go give them a follow. Much love, everyone. Enjoy the episode. Peace. Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to the podcast, Autism Goes to College. I am Dr. Nazeer Zerka. I go by Dr. Naz. I'm a counselor and therapist at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. I was a college student myself. I did my undergrad, I did my master's and my doctorate, and all while being autistic, neurodivergent, right, throughout the entire time. Here I'm with Catherine O'Brien, let's edit that, the host of Autism Goes to College podcast. So you're going to share some insights. We're going to have a good conversation. I'm going to hand it over to Catherine now.
Thanks, Dr. Naz. So you mentioned you're at Purdue, which I know is a large school, a prestigious academic school with a big social scene. It's the type of school that I actually did not put on my college list as an autistic high schooler because that all felt overwhelming to me. So it's a lot for students. What are students on the spectrum bringing to you in the counseling office? What is life like at Purdue for them?
It depends, right? If you're talking about young freshmen coming in, like you stated, it could be intense, right? There's like 55,000, 57,000 students here. Majority of them do live on campus or in the greater surrounding area. It's a lot. The change is a lot being a freshman, right? Transitioning, homesickness, anxiety, all the social situations, right? This is one of the top engineering schools in America, let alone the world. So there's a lot of pressure as well that students are bringing. I was the smartest. Now I'm like middle of the pack, maybe less than in the pack. And now since I'm not functioning that well because of all these other things that are going on, maybe I'm even below the pack. Now I'm freaking out. Now I'm melting down. Uh, and so it just
Mhm.
really depends. There's intellectual stuff, anxiety, depression, masking. I mean, you name it. When freshmen come in, the only thing that probably helps is if they already understand what's going on and they've had some systems and supports beforehand, because now they know
Mhm.
to prep for some of the craziness. But yeah,
Mhm.
as soon as you get on campus, it's wild.
Yeah, and is it nonstop in the fall? Does it ramp up closer to finals? It does sound like it can be a challenging adjustment for first years.
So when I'm talking to first years, specifically those that are autistic, hey, we got the first like 2 weeks. I say it takes for people to normalize into college life. Folks that are autistic, I'm like, hey, we're gonna need about a month, about 4 good weeks. We're feeling good, but then guess what happens about 4 good weeks? Then you got exams. You know, eight
Midterms.
weeks, 8 weeks, you got midterms. All right, so now you're starting to see a high influx of students coming into the counseling center in the very beginning. Hell, even in the summer, they'll start to prep. And then we got that 8 week mark, that 5 week mark where it starts to get real wild. And then that's when they're just freaking out, scared, they're falling behind. But then finals week, well, that's when we get people that just are depressed now. So now my autistic clients are completely checked out, completely avoidant, not showing up to classes, don't want to tell their parents because of multiple different identities that they're holding, depending on race, economic status, different things like that. And so that moment in time is not so much anxiety and working on homework and skills and masking. That part is working on, are we going to drop these classes? Are we going to take an academic withdrawal? Making sure that we're not suicidal, like harming. Do we need to figure out medication for next semester? So now it's a lot of safety planning and then future planning to make sure the next semester is good. Or do we, college isn't our thing? I usually say don't make a decision if college is not your thing or not in the first semester. The first semester is crazy.
Mhm. I agree. And it's often that the college that you're at is not the best fit, not that college writ large isn't for you. So
Yep.
it sounds like you encounter some students in crisis as well as students who benefit from some proactive planning to prevent the crisis. What sort of supports are helping them in the counseling service? What are you able to offer?
We can offer a lot. So I'm a social worker by trade, right? Doctorate in
Mhm.
social work. And so compared to psychologists where they're just doing the one-on-one therapy, I'm taking the entire background of that person and trying to set them up. So I did
Holistically.
holistically and making connections. Like I'll pick up the phone call and call some people for you now.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I need to see, do I need to make a phone call to get us to talk to a doctor? Maybe you're not good at making phone calls. Maybe you're not good at writing emails. Do I need to show you on how to use voice to text in Google or Dragon on campus? It's called the program. Uh,
Mhm.
do I need to show you how to input that into ChatGPT to help you write your email so you can just send it without anxiety? Or maybe you have dyslexia like me. Do I need to
Mm.
set you up with disability services on campus to get you extended times? Maybe work on some absences.
Yeah.
Maybe we need a quiet testing center like I just sent a boy to the other day. Like it depends. As a social worker, you're trying to figure out what you need. But the biggest thing is making sure that they got the resources that they need, which is a million different things on campus when it comes to accountability, clubs, like friendship. Therapy is awesome, but it's not the end all be all. When we're doing therapy in
Yeah.
my office, the biggest thing is affirming, validating, and making sure that they got a strategic plan. Because when you have
Mhm.
a plan, you're like not as freaked out because you're like, oh crap, okay, Nas has told me to do this, this, and this. Let's try this, this, and this week.
Mhm. Yeah. So I know Purdue has an incredible reputation in STEM and especially engineering students.
Yep.
Those are high pressure majors with a lot of demands, and they also tend to attract students with certain kinds of profiles. Do you see that showing up in certain ways in the counseling office?
Yeah. So as we know, right, folks on the spectrum, we have higher rates of mental health issues. We also have higher rates of a bunch of death, bunch of other comorbidities.
Hmm.
Um, and so you've seen these engineering kids. And we just recently hired some folks who work specifically with engineering kids because the mental health issues are such a big thing. But computer
Mm.
science, you're going to see it in cybersecurity. You're going to see it in, right? Where you're
Mm-hmm.
going to see is a lot of these neurodivergent kids. A lot of them are going to identify as being autistic. Some of them won't obviously know because their whole family's kind of coded that way, so they think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
And then they meet a counselor like me, and I'm like, oh, something's different in the sauce here.
Hey,
When
you're normal? Is it everybody else's normal, friend?
I was like, yeah, what's going on here? Because they're like, why can't I? Why doesn't my executive functioning work? I'm like, because there's something getting in the way, kid. Your neurology.
Mm-hmm.
But you see a high rate of our people in there because some of our brains really love it. The systems, mathematics, everything's very literal, right? You get an input, you put in an input, you get an output. Some of my
Yeah.
students love it. It's not a very social thing, the engineering stuff, so you can run away and hide and get invested in your computer. And I always like the preference, that's just one version of right being autistic. I got a bunch of others that love education, that love art, that love history.
Poetry. Yeah.
I got a
It's
client that just sent me poetry last night. I'm like,
mm.
love poetry, but
Mm-hmm.
man, it's so hard for me to read it and all the metaphors in it. I'm like, damn it, just send me the journal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to swear.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand. I like poetry, but it's hard for me to unpack too.
It takes a second to unpack it. Yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
wide dysphoria, not dysphoria, wide autism, not a monolith. And so you got so many students, so many of these programs, and folks will think, well, Nas, you think everyone's autistic. That's not true. But the folks that are coming in our office are highly deregulated, overstimulated, anxious, suicidal, harming. And so you're going to see a higher population of our folks that are autistic and in engineering and all these things, non-binary, right, trans identities.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see it in our offices. And so we are seeing a higher clip of autism because we suffer more mental health issues and crises. And it's been
Mm-hmm.
really hard trying to reprogram some of my colleagues to understand that.
Mm.
Been interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas you understand it very naturally, I'm assuming, as an autistic counselor yourself. So I'm guessing people listening to this, hearing you talk about your work and the supports and connections that you're able to make for students, are wishing there was a Dr. Naz for them at their school. Does the student counseling service or the student support office advertise that there are neurodivergent specialists on staff? How do students connect with you?
So yes and no. We do have some groups that are specifically for autistic folks that are run group therapy. But if you request, so it's not really advertised a ton, but it is on the website. If you go to the website, I don't run the group anymore right now. Right, one of my colleagues runs it. That's also autistic, which is magnificent.
Oh, fab.
I run a graduate group, and
Mm.
so the graduate groups are all everything's advertised. But the thing is, a lot of
Mhm.
graduate groups going to be PhD kids. A lot of PhD kids going to be autistic or neurodivergent. To run
Bingo.
to run a PhD group is to run a neurodivergent group, which is magnificent. So advertise not a ton, but here's the thing though: when you call in, you're going to get an ask about identities, race, sexuality, gender, all of it, right?
Mhm.
And they'll ask, well, hey, do you have any preference for what you were looking for to work on? Is it ADHD stuff, autism stuff? Is it stress stuff, eating disorder stuff, right? And if they say certain things that sounds like ADHD or autism, or social skills, right? Some
Mhm.
type of dysphoria, they're gonna push the kid towards me.
Mhm.
Um, so they're gonna be like, hey, Nas is awesome, blah, blah, blah. This is his credentials. And then the
Mhm.
kid says yes or no. So in the immediate consult, it is advertised that I'm the person that they can go to,
Mhm.
which is why I see a high rate of folks that are autistic in my office or neurodivergent because right they triage them to me. Um, there's a few articles in Purdue that like I'm advertised about, but a lot of that's working with students of color, not so much as autism, because I work a lot with
Mhm.
students of color too.
Yeah, and autistic students of color are particularly under-supported, so it's really important
Yes.
to make sure that they have people in their corner. Um, Speaking of making sure we have people in our corner, how have you found the training for social workers and counselors around autism? Is it something that is available to the other folks in your office to learn? Is there professional development for you guys?
It's straight up trash, bro. You get like one paragraph of like this is autism, and you're like, oh, okay. Wait a minute,
Hmm.
what's autism? Oh, they're disabled. Oh, got it. Okay, yeah. So you don't really learn about autism. To be fair, in a lot of these fields, you don't really dig in a lot into a lot of the diagnoses, but autism, that's really on the back burner. When you're talking about DEI and diversity, equity, inclusion related like causes these days, autism is really not in the forefront of any of the things. Disability is not in the forefront of any of those things. It's usually going to be based on race, sexuality, and gender, which is awesome. But it's also we hold a lot of them identities too. And so when it comes to trainings, they're starting to become more now, but led by a lot of neurodivergent autistic folks. When it's coming to the programming, like coming out in school, the DSM and all that stuff, it's been reworked in the last few years. Still very lacking the DSM, the diagnostic criteria that we use as therapists. Um, like right now, I just did a training the other day for my staff on autism. And, I always feel like it goes well, but like, who knows? People always love it. But then I say a lot of out of pocket things. And so I can see my bosses like cringing when I say out of pocket stuff.
Mhm.
But I'm like, it is what it is. Like, you can't tell me to mask my autism and then do an autism training. That just sounds wrong. And so I'm like, hey, you get what you get. You want me to do it?
Mhm.
I'll do it.
Mhm.
Um, the cool thing is a lot of my homies in my
Mhm.
grad programs. So it really comes down to us, not the administrators. So a lot of my homies will have me go in and guest lecture on autism or being an autistic therapist or a neurodivergent therapist. And so I've done it maybe like 5 or 6 times just this semester already.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
they usually give me like an hour and they just like, Nas, I don't care what you say, just let it rip. And I talk really fast because there's so much material.
Mhm.
And it happens every single time as people will like unmute for questions and they'll be like, you know what, Nas? And I'm like, I know what you're gonna say. They're like,
Mhm.
I'm autistic and this has been an awesome training. This feels really validating and awesome. I just want to thank you. And I'm like, oh my God, stop.
Mm.
Um, and then they'll
Mhm.
ask me for resources, and then I'll give them a ton of resources so they can do more investigating on their own. Uh,
Mhm.
so it comes down to clinicians asking people to come in, like, hey, man, come in.
Mhm. Yeah. So, do you see students who are discovering their diagnosis for the first time? I ask because what you said about students unmuting and thanking you reminds me of what happens when I lecture on autism, which is, I feel so seen. This is often femme presenting people in particular. I feel so seen, and I never thought it could be me, but I'm thinking it is. How do I get diagnosed? Does that happen to you?
Bruh, all the time. So there's a couple different things that come in my therapeutic office and in my private practice, which I run here in Indiana and Michigan, is folks come in for one thing. And I'm like, okay, you're tabulating all the stuff, boom, 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 boom. By the stuff, I mean you're just collecting things that are abnormal. Uh, Trauma, anxiety, eating disorders, OCD, ADHD. Oh, there's a genetic component. Oh, your sisters or your brother's got autism. Oh, you've got some joint mobility. You go through everything. And you're like, hey, so there's a chance that you could be autistic. I'm gonna send you some screeners, and we're gonna figure this out together. And even if you're not, you're definitely neurodivergent because, and I don't say this in a bad way, you're not normal. So what is this thing that we're talking about and dealing with, so we can better identify it and then move forward. And so I get a lot of folks that are like, "Yo, I'm autistic. I need the help. I've always had help." And then I get the folks that come in with, "I'm just here because I got anxiety or OCD or trichotillomania, where you're plucking things, whatever it is." And then I'm
Mhm.
like, there's some other stuff here.
Yeah.
And then you've got some folks that come in that I'm like, you know what? I don't think the diagnosis would be beneficial at this point. I'm just going to work for them on this one thing. And if they continue therapy with me, then we'll dive in how it could be some neurodivergent stuff. So
Yeah.
there's a couple different points. The middle ones are the funnest because it's like a coming. I don't mean this super religiously, but my
Mhm.
boss would say this. It's a coming to Jesus like moment.
Mhm.
You're like,
Yeah.
so child,
Yeah.
you're autistic.
Yeah. Consider the possibility that these 10 unrelated things are connected to a single root cause.
What's that root cause? Autism. Oh, I'm not autistic. I was like, well,
Mm.
and if you're autistic, then mom or dad has to be autistic. Oh no, my parents aren't autistic. What's your dad do? He's an engineer. Oh yeah. What's his hobbies? He collects trains. Okay.
Yeah, I recently got an email from my dad titled "I Like Trains." So, yeah.
Yeah, there you go, man. I come from a very neurodivergent family myself, going all the way back to legit to our homeland, which is like Lebanon and Palestine. And so
Mhm.
you see the neurodivergence and the autism throughout the entire Arabic side of my family. And then you can see it on my mother's Hispanic side too. But I didn't know I was autistic and like firm in that belief till probably about 30. But I've
Mhm.
been operating in this world as neurodivergent, as ADHD, tons of issues when I was in school. You think I would have known this? Behavior modification school for like
Mhm.
multiple years, a lot of stuff. But my brother's been diagnosed autistic since I think he was like 5-ish, maybe 3-ish.
Mhm.
So then I start getting older and older and older. I'm like, wait a minute, Dad, you're the autistic one. And he's like, no, I'm not. And I'm like, yep, you are. And then we'll have these moments where he's like, damn it, I'm autistic as hell.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
So, what's your experience like helping people unpack that stigma? Because a lot of times that knee jerk, like, oh, it's not me, comes from a lot of stereotyped information and this the rampant disability stigma.
Yeah, so it comes from like right this ableism stuff. It comes from I don't want to be seen as disabled. I don't want to be seen as less than. I don't want to be seen as the R word.
Mhm.
Um, and so you unpack it as curiosity. You unpack it as this is a thing already. I know I know your brain's different. We're just trying to figure out how different is it.
Mhm.
So you come at it with like love, but also fun. So I'm a quirky kind of weird. And I'm like, well, I can't have autism because of this, this, and this. And I'm like, hey, I'm sitting right in front of you, autistic as hell, with a doctorate,
Mhm.
and I can talk good and all this stuff, right? So
Mhm.
I don't want to get in if it's disabling or not disabling, but because there's
Yeah,
a lot of
no.
disabling stuff for me, but there's also I'm not like disabled where I can't executive function on anything. And so a
Mhm.
lot of people think that executive functioning or cognitive abilities is tied into autism. Those are completely separate things that are also highly comorbid with autism, but it's not autism. There's a lot of stuff in that gumbo pot, what we call
Mhm.
neurodivergent.
Mhm.
But man, it's awesome. It's like when I'm working with a student of color and I get emotional sometimes
Mhm.
because when you're working with your people, it means more.
Mhm.
Like they call it transference
Mhm.
or countertransference, right? And so
Mhm.
you see yourself in that kid, that child, and you get to support them and like love them in a way that no one ever has.
Mhm.
One of my men of color the other day cries. I ain't never cried in front of no one my entire life, and they cry in front of you, and you're like, I ain't gonna lie, I cried too. It is what it is.
Mhm.
Uh, and they're neurodivergent too in a certain way.
Mhm.
So it's impactful. I get my students that are autistic, and they may find out that they're autistic with me, and then they're like, man, I just vibe with you, man. This feels good.
Mhm. Mhm.
I had a student the other day that's just like, this is awesome. Like, I don't have to explain anything to you. Like, I don't even have to talk in complete sentences because you just know where the next sentence is going, or you can read all the other stuff where you always have to over explain and then stutter and then deregulate because the shame and guilt.
Mhm.
And my office is completely unmasked. Students, I can see them trying to calculate what you're saying, how to say it. I'm like, just send it. I've been working with folks that go all the way from nonverbal to don't shut up. I'll figure it out.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
honestly,
good.
sometimes that's the same individual in different moments of regulation,
Yep.
nonverbal to hyperverbal.
Yep.
Yeah, speaking of identities and feeling sort of cared for and healed in your own identity as somebody who holds many, there's a shortage of neurodivergent therapists, therapists of color, men in the healing space. What should students do if they're having a hard time connecting to a therapist that really understands them on that deep level, like you were describing?
Uh, so when it comes to students looking for resources and just overall getting therapy, I would not harp so much on some maybe the other identities is to find someone that either works with neurodivergent kids, gifted kids. But if you
Mm.
can't find autism, just sync up with someone that works really good with ADHD.
Oh,
If,
okay.
if they say they work with ADHD, then they know the neurodivergent vibe. If they
Mm.
work really good with OCD, like the
Mhm.
specialties in OCD, that would be magnificent to work with.
Mhm.
Most of the profiles are going to say anxiety, depression. Magnificent. Okay. But if they got any type of specialty or like more in the ADHD, or OCD range, it's going to be a little bit better at working with you. They may not understand everything, but the ADHD therapist, they going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't normally develop a speciality in therapy unless you've already got one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
You identify with it. That's why it's your specialty. It's not always true. That's kind of a generalization, but most of us go into the work in which we feel like has healed us, or we feel like we want to learn more about ourselves or our family.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of folks will go into trauma work. People go into trauma work because they usually got a lot of trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
I studied autism, right, and did my dissertation on autism, specifically in women and how they present as
Mm-hmm.
I'm autistic. But also,
Yeah.
I wanted to take that population and then generalize it to all the boys
Mm-hmm.
because of what we call, right, the symptomologies are like different, right? We know
Yeah.
that. So I would kind of start out like that. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
scared of any men or masculine presenting individuals. You actually might fit a little bit better because we're going to be a little bit strategic, our brains and how we work, a little bit more blunt. Where some of the other therapists that are women or femme presenting, they may make you sit in emotions a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
They might make you like, how's that make you feel? There might be a lot of awkward silences because therapy is supposed to be focused on emotions. With some of us, we're like, hey, this is what we're talking about. This is the solution. This is what we're going to do. We're also going to sit in the emotions for like a smidge, but now we're about to do something. So a
Yeah.
lot of my students like more of that strategy
Mm-hmm.
instead of just sitting in the emotion, because then all you do is just deregulate the whole damn time. And so they don't want to go back to therapy because they're just traumatized the whole time.
Yeah, and it's also can feel a little bit difficult if you have any degree of lack of emotional insight or alexithymia, and you're sitting in an emotion that you can't really feel.
And if you can't feel it, but maybe you can feel it, but you don't know how to articulate it, now you're just screwed. So now you feel terrible, and now the whole shame spirals. So if you have someone else that doesn't just sit in emotions or just like make you talk the whole time, because a lot of my autistic clients are like, give me questions, I'll answer them. I'm like, oh, I'm good at questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you talk a little bit about your academic career and, from undergrad to your doctorate in social work, how you found this path?
So as I told one of your colleagues, it's been a long path, so it's a long story.
Hmm. Fair
But
enough.
yeah, you're talking elementary school, you're talking about a lot of deregulating,
Hmm.
behavior modification school, you're talking about being in special ed until ninth grade. You're talking about, dyslexia, not being able to read well, and everyone thinking that I was stupid, me thinking that I was stupid. But then I'm excelling in mathematics and science, and like I'm in like ninth grade level math homework in this specialized school, but like I'm in like second grade reading. Um,
Mm.
and then they give me like Ritalin. Um, and does that help? It didn't really help me, but it did help me. But I don't take any medicine now. So things changed a lot also when my father got out of prison. So that changed everything, because now you have someone showing you this is what it takes to be a good boy. This is what it takes to be a good student. This is what it takes. I had
Hmm.
that motivation and passion to like actually sit down and read at that moment,
Hmm.
which then parlayed me into doing really good in academics. Then parlayed me to being a really big athlete. So I went to college for like athletics and football. I quit that, focused on school because I'm not smart enough. Like it's not easy enough for me. So I had to quit football.
Hmm. Yeah,
I
you needed
pivoted.
that time.
I
Hmm.
needed the time. And so I
Yeah.
pivoted from becoming a doctor to physical therapist because I love muscles. Eventually, I pivoted into doing therapy because I couldn't get into the doctorate of physical therapy because it was just a
Oh,
waiting list. It was too long. You need like a 3.8. I had like a 3.4, 3.5.
okay. Yeah.
But in the meantime, so I'm going to pivot the conversation into this. Writing was always my worst part. The reason why I couldn't get into being a physical therapist, because all my lab reports, all my papers are always like D's and C's.
I see. Okay, and that made it hard to get that 3.8 GPA that PT schools need to see. Okay,
How do you get those 4.0s if your papers are always coming in underperforming?
that's
And my professors be like, "You've got tons of resources and articles in your site. It's magnificent. I don't know what the hell you're saying." The sentence structure would be so poor. The grammar, I didn't. It would, and the spelling, it would be horrible. And I would never reread my papers because of the shame and the hatred I had because I felt so stupid.
mm,
So then
mhm.
I get to my master's program, and my professor's like, "Bro, you got to reread your articles like about 8 or 9 times." neurodivergent, director of the program, therapist.
Mhm.
And I always like to mention he's out of Flint, Michigan, which is my dad's hometown. And he was also a recovering addict. And so he's like, dude, I get it. This shit is hard. Sorry to swear.
No, it's fine. This shit is hard.
It's hard. And he said, I need you to rewrite. And so I would reread my articles, my papers, 10 page, 15 page, 20 page things 9 times. And it would take hours and hours and hours and hours. But eventually they got it good enough where I was getting A's on these things. Instead of the first semester in my master's program, they told me to drop out.
Oh,
And with my mentor, I loved her. She gave me a big old hug and kiss on the cheek when I graduated. She acknowledged you got a choice. You either use the resources that are available to you or you need to drop out.
mhm.
And so I went to the writing center, didn't really like that, but I learned from my professor, you just got to keep rereading. And you wait a couple days, then you reread it, and you can start to catch all these errors. I started doing good. I decided to do a doctorate. They made me buy the Grammarly program. So shout out to Grammarly for helping me with my writing. It's not that expensive, but it is expensive. But my God, that helps so much in my doctorate
Mhm.
program. I can talk really well. I can intellectualize better than almost any individual based on all the computer science I got going on in here, lived experience, books that I've read. But typing it is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Texting my friends is impossible. They never know what the hell I'm saying. So now I use voice to text for everything. And these dang Samsung cell phones, they got an AI thing on it now where you can click it and it'll reformat it for you like ChatGPT. It'll clean it up.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot more options for writing support than there were, 10, 15 years ago, which is really helpful. Like, I mean,
Really helpful.
I had to I my English teacher would make me read aloud my writing to myself because I also resisted any proofreading. Like, I didn't want to go back into it. I didn't want to look at it. I was ashamed of it. Um, but yeah, she made me read stuff aloud.
Here's an interesting thing is reading it out loud did help. Reading, people are there's a small percentage of people that are going to get this when I say it. I can't read fast. So if I read fast, it gets all jumbled. The ADHD kicks in. I don't know what the heck I read for the last 3 pages. But if I slow down and I read louder, my voice is louder in my brain. So the
Mhm.
narrator that's reading is louder in my brain. Then for some reason I can read everything and retain everything. And then it all makes sense and I can rewrite or I can comprehend. I had to slow down, increase the volume in my brain of which I was reading. And then it was magnificent. Then everything clicked. That was in my master's program. I figured that out.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I couldn't read, I've never actually read a full book until I was a graduate student at like 22 years old. Never read a full book until 22. And then I went on a hyper focused binge of like hundreds of books after that
Yeah,
because I was like, I'm not stupid. I can read.
I can do this now. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yep.
My first book is All the Light We Cannot See, Pulitzer Prize winner. Some of it's in French. I was like, of course, I picked the hardest damn book to read.
Yeah. Yep. So in college and in graduate school, did you seek accommodations? Have you used that experience to inform your work with students?
So I never saw accommodations because I didn't know that they were afforded. I didn't know that all schools had
Mm,
them. So how can I seek something I didn't know existed?
okay. I
I'm a
bet that
therapist.
happens with students too.
All the time. Yeah, they don't know the resources they got. I didn't even know what therapy was until I was in school to become a therapist.
Yep.
so
Okay.
uh so how was I supposed to know it was free at our counseling center? At our old school, like a couple years before mine, they actually mandated that every therapist use the school therapy center at least twice to understand how it felt.
Oh,
I,
interesting. Okay.
I thought that
Yeah.
was a magnificent thing. I was kind of sad that they did away with that. And then, of course, some kids sued. And so they did
Oh,
away with it. But it informs my practice now because I tell students resources all the time.
yeah.
I work with a lot of students of color, and none of them know the resources. And the only reason why they do is because I specifically put myself in those spaces to talk to my people. I'm like,
Mm.
hey man, they got therapists, we got resources, I can talk to you and help you. So once a week, I'm in the cultural center, just hanging out, kicking it with students. And
Mhm.
since I'm kicking it with a lot of my students of color, I go to their outings and their events, and their Greek life is a little bit different. The Latino fraternities, sororities, a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
But no one ever knows the services. Right now, a lot of the mostly white frats are having me come in. And it's magnificent because none of these boys even knew what mental health was or what anxiety, depression is. And I just do a little talk, and then I get a mass email from the boys like, hey, I need to talk to you. Or like, hey, I've been autistic because I always announce that I'm autistic. Because that way it's less, they got less ableism in their brain when they think about autism. Yep. And they're like, hey, man, I've been dealing with this for years, and I would love to sit down and talk to you. I'm like, let's do it. So now I promote a lot of things. And I normalize a lot of things, right? Even me getting the degree back in my family and hometown helps normalize a lot of mental health related stuff, right? Mental health is really not a topic.
And now you've got someone in the family who is a mental health practitioner, a healer, putting attention on this. What do you think drives the lack of awareness for certain students that these services even exist? Are there structural inequities driving the lack of awareness? What's going on there?
Well, that was a good point there. Right, in a lot of these more impoverished schools, lower socioeconomic schools like I went to, there's not a lot of services. So why would college have services? And if you're even lucky enough to go to college, right, you're not thinking about services. You're thinking about just surviving. But when it comes to the kids that know what services are, well, they're more susceptible to using them because they know what they are. Most of the kids, they just don't know because it's not really talked about or advertised because the student that's functioning, quote unquote, normally or neurotypically or just doing well, they don't know. And then they finally hit some hardship and then they don't ever address it. And then it's too late now. By the end of the semester, they failed. So you see a bigger push now from a lot of professors, academic advisors, student health, a lot of mental health push. And so they're just pushing the counseling center out there like, hey, this is a resource, right? We do a lot of things now, tabling, this is a resource. I just went in and talked to all the military branch for the Army at my school. And they're like, oh my God, this is a resource. And you want to talk about a very neurodivergent autistic bunch, you go talk to some military kids. But I'm not going to say too much more because I don't want to get into those kids in trouble.
Oh my God. Yeah. The number of recruiters that I've talked to that are like, technically, you may not enlist if you are autistic. However, off the record, I suspect that all of us are autistic and you simply do not have to tell me. And then they like look at the kid and the kid is like looking at me like, am I supposed to lie to this man?
Yes. If you want to go in, yes. FYI, for anyone wants to go into certain branches of the military, government, if you want to go into aerospace, engineering, stuff like that, you want to be a pilot, there's certain things that you can't have on your record, which is a mental health issue or an autism diagnosis. So you talk to your therapist, you work on all those things, you never get a formal diagnosis, you have them keep their notes very bland, FYI, because those things could get subpoenaed when you go into that branch or, whatever job that you're doing. So you can still work on all your autism, neurodivergent stuff. Just don't get the formal diagnosis and make sure that they don't put that in their note. That way it protects you. So a lot of folks won't get services because they're scared because now they can't be a pilot. Now they can't go in the military. I'm glad you said that so I could say that. Yeah. But, oh man, there's so spectrumy in there is wild.
Oh yeah, no, it's got a lot to offer a neurodivergent individual in terms of things that can appeal to our wiring.
I would have never known, even though all my friends went to the military out of school, and all my friends are autistic because that's all we do is collect each other like Pokemon.
Yeah.
So they went to that. The reason why I didn't probably go military is I had good grades and I was bigger, faster, stronger than everyone. So I played football. They played football too, but I was just bigger than them.
Yeah, you played it better.
Yeah, I was just bigger. I was just gifted, man. Some of us are just gifted. But yeah, man, you see it. There's a lot of other sectors in the world, I'm sure you've covered on the podcast, where like our population tends to hover. That's just one. Engineering's one, arts one, music's one. Hey.
Yeah. Hollywood and Silicon Valley. There's a lot of neurodivergent people that get drawn to California.
A lot of actors, actresses, right? A lot of folks who show improv, comedy. You want to talk about comedy, we can talk about it, but in the professional sports as well. People don't understand that some of the really intense folks gotta be autistic. They have to be because of the specificity, the regimen, the militants, but also
Mhm.
you can see it. And I don't want to get in trouble for this, but Nick Saban, greatest coach of all time, autistic. Bill Belichick, autistic. I don't care what people tell me, they're autistic.
Yeah. Who cuts the sleeves off of their hoodies because they don't like sleeves? People with sensory issues.
Also, just the affect, the way that they handle themselves. It's just magnificent watching Nick Saban on college football in the morning on Saturdays, and you see Pat McAfee, definitely ADHD, most likely autistic too. You see him and Nick Saban, and Saban just looking at him like, "What are you doing?" I always say, I comment every day on Instagram on Saturdays. It's the two versions of autism: the ADHD one, and then the chill one.
Yeah.
Uh, but Kawhi Leonard, definitely autistic. They make fun of him. NBA champion. They call him the robot and the cyborg. And I think it's very shameful the way they do it, but they're making fun of him. He's branded it as a cyborg, but there's a lot of folks that are autistic and they just don't know it. I've worked with some magnificent athletes. And I'm like, hey, I think you're autistic, brother. And like the coaching staff were like, oh, of course he is. I'm like, why haven't any of you told him? Because they feel like it's not their place. And then as soon as he tells the team, everyone's like, yeah, dude, we knew. But my kid was feeling like an alien his entire college collegiate career and wondering why he couldn't people right. And this is like an all-American athlete too. Um, it's just interesting on how we see autism.
Yeah.
I don't know. I pivoted. I forgot the question. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. We were
Vibing.
talking about accommodations and also vibing. Yeah, my research is actually on relationships between neurodivergent people and how and why we collect each other and whether diagnosis helps you collect each other.
Yes.
So yeah, I totally agree.
We collect each other.
Yeah. Circling back to the students who are listening to this podcast, what do you have as tips for them about accommodations? Like what is most popular, what is most underrated yet awesome? Accommodation tips for current students.
The biggest thing is I do need you to talk to the access services or disability services, and you need to sign up and you need to just talk to them. Just talk to them. So whether that's extended time, the testing center, whether that's note takers that are given to you, the note taker one is highly underrated.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's usually a kiddo in there that's designated as the note taker. Then they send those notes out, or they give you the lectures recorded automatically because not everyone gets those. Or they're going to give you like this pen that's a highlighter and it'll highlight things in the notes and then it'll upload it to the cloud and then you've got them as notes.
Mm-hmm.
So do that. If there's any accountability groups in the Student Success Center or the Academic Success Center, talk to those coaches. Talk to them over there, the academic coaches. They can work with you on a couple things when it comes to your schooling, focus, attention, executive functioning. But also there could be some programming for like socializing, social skills, first year freshmen, right? Homesickness.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing is you got to be an advocate. You got to learn to be, and it's hard. You got to self-advocate. And if you're privileged and blessed enough to have insurance,
Mm-hmm.
then get a therapist that you meet weekly and it's routine. If not, then use the therapy at the counseling center. But remember, it's going to be probably every other week at a big school, every other week, every 3 weeks at a smaller school, maybe every week for a short time though.
Yeah.
Those are some of the services. You'd be surprised. Something that's underrated is just socializing and like finding your people and humans. So what are you humans in? Are they in the anime club? Are they in the Dungeons and Dragons club? Are they in the ballroom dancing club? Like where are they? Are they in the crochet club? A lot of good people in that crochet club. So what are the clubs and organizations on campus? Because you're going to meet a lot of like-minded individuals. They're not going to be any horrific people in the crochet club. In the ballroom club, it's going to be a lot of good people. It's not going to be a lot of nasty. A lot of them are going to be very inclusive too, because our people in there. So most of the time, it is pretty inclusive.
Yeah, the swing dance club at my undergrad institution was very neurodivergent and very welcoming. I had no interest in swing dance, but I liked the people, so I would go occasionally.
Hey, whatever you want to use, but the academic stuff is always first. If you've got insurance, you seek outside therapy. If not, then you come to the counseling center. And then if you don't know the resources, then one of the therapists or social workers there will know the ones and they'll be able to hook you up too. But the biggest thing I always say is the note taker one could save your life. That note taker.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I really like some of the automatic recording stuff. I have Otter AI that produces a written transcript of the lectures
There
after
you go.
recording. So any type of voice to text feature I find really helpful.
There you go. So some of the schools will give that out for free. Some of my kids just have that.
Hmm.
Like they just buy their own like thing and then they set their cell phone there and it does it.
Yeah.
Was yours through the school or did you have it on your own?
Yeah, mine is through the school because I have official permission to record
Yep.
lectures.
Yep.
Depending on your state and also your institution's requirements, you probably have to seek instructor permission to record
Yep.
or get it formalized through the disability services at your school. But yeah, I have the school's copy. I think it's beneficial enough that I might purchase it on my own once I complete my PhD.
There you go. It's services are awesome. I didn't access many services, right? The services I accessed was mentorship, guidance, love, support from my professors.
Mhm.
My father's got a ninth grade education, and he said, "Hey, man, I can't tell you anything about school. Right? I've been in prison for so many years. So I need you to go talk." So he would push me to go talk to professors or
Mhm.
teachers. So all I ever did was I go in those office hours, or I pull them right after class. I'm like, "Yo, we need to talk." And I know that they hated me sometimes because I could see them walking away from me. I would legit walk them to their car. That's how autistic I was sometimes. I'm like, "We're gonna finish this conversation unless you tell me to go away."
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not I'm not done.
I'm
I
not
get
done.
that. Yeah, I
You can
think
set a boundary and I'll go away, but until you set that boundary, I'm gonna learn from you because I don't get the book. I mean, it's just too hard to read. So I need you to help me.
yeah. I I think making relationships with professors is so helpful because then
Yes.
when things get hard, they're inclined to care about you and support you.
Hey, if you can use your identities to help you to gain empathy from your professors is magnificent.
Mhm.
That's the reason why I did so well a lot of the time because like, Nas, I know you're busting your hump here. Well,
Mhm.
what do you turn it in? This doesn't make any sense because I know you talk to me. And so they'd be like, when I do bad on something, they'd be like, Nas, you need to come talk to me. There's no way this is what you turned in.
Yeah.
And it was always around the writing. So
Yeah.
I know making relationships is really hard for a lot of folks, the anxiety, the shame, the guilt. But as my father would say, he's like, "You're paying for this.
Mhm.
You are paying for this. College loans, of course, but like they work for you. So go get your money, go talk to them. Don't sit here and cry about it, homie. You can cry about it, but you better go get something for it, those tears.
Cry
You
in office hours. They have tissues.
can cry in office hours, but we got to get something for those tears.
Yep.
I'm much more, we have to grow from this.
Mhm.
And so I would go in and talk, man. That's the only reason why I made it through my graduate program is because of my professors were magnificent and I truly loved them. Uh,
Mm.
and then if you're talking about like actual resources that are on campus, was my friends.
Yeah.
Without my friends, I guarantee you I'd be dead or in prison. Fact. I've
Mhm.
always said that. I always will say that. Without my friends, my little autistic friends, there would be no Nas.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you to our people for having
Yep.
our back.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Naz, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I always love talking about our people, man, especially with our people. It feels much
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, that's what this show's all about.
Yeah, with our people.
Mhm.
We got the our podcast. That's how we kind of got connected to y'all.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, because they showed the movie. They
Yeah.
showed the Autism Goes to College in our counseling center, and then I was like, "What is this?" And I was like, So I went and looked it up. I found the director. Right, I emailed him, and
Mhm.
I was like, "We got to talk, brother." Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
he emailed back almost instantly. I was like, "Oh my god."
Yep. Yep. Eric's great.
Eric's awesome. So we set something up and we had a magnificent conversation on our podcast. And so thank you for
Yeah.
having me on. I'm really glad that they showed the documentary on our campus.
Yeah.
And I'm
I'm
glad I reached
glad.
out to Eric.
I'm so glad you did too.